Last season, the 49ers came really close to beating Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And a few months later, they find themselves eliminated from playoff contention. And it looks like the Super Bowl hangover has killed the 49ers 2024 campaign. You had all of the distractions with the Brandon Ayuk contract saga. Was he going to get traded? Was he going to stay with the team? Were they going to cave to his demands? Well, the 49ers finally caved to Brandon Ayuk's contract demands. They're able to kind of find a compromise, offer him to get injured early during the season. Not just do you lose Brandon Ayuk due to injury, but the same thing happened to Trent Williams. And Brandon Ayuk wasn't the only person who the 49ers were in a standoff with when it came to contract negotiations. Trent Williams was also kind of holding his hand out before the season, looking to get paid a little bit more. And then he comes back, and then boom, he gets injured again. And then you got Christian McCaffrey, who gets injured, which I think his injury is more due to him being on the cover of Madden. Listen, I'm not somebody that believes in superstitions, but when it comes to the Madden curse, I believe that thing is to be taken seriously, because most of everybody that's on the cover of Madden, they always end up going out the worst of ways. You know, not everybody has the voodoo magic that Mahomes and Brady have to overcome the Madden curse. And with Christian McCaffrey being viewed as an injury-prone player for pretty much the entirety of his career, as soon as he was on the cover of Madden, I knew not to draft him in fantasy football. I don't know why anybody else wouldn't take that red flag, but I was not about to gamble investing the first overall pick in the fantasy league on a guy that has the injury history like Christian McCaffrey does, coupled with the possibility of him falling victim to the Madden curse, which he definitely is now a victim of. And the injury bug just destroyed the 49ers this year. But injuries aren't the complete reason why they have fallen victim to the infamous Super Bowl hangover, because, listen, a sore subject is Brock Purdy. Everybody knows that Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. He has overachieved up to this point. And the biggest question that we've been asking about Brock Purdy is, how long can he continue to play good football? Like, is this man just too good to be true? Is he eventually going to come back down to earth? Well, this season, he's come back down to earth in a major way, because let's just be honest, Brock Purdy has regressed tremendously when you compare how good he was his first season and how good he was last year during the 49ers Super Bowl run to this season. He's not good taking care of the football. He's not clutch at all. Like, if a game is on the line and Brock Purdy has the ball in his hands with an opportunity to win it, it seems like he always folds. He never comes through. And he's not good throwing the ball from outside the pocket. He's not really good on the run. He has good mobility. He can extend plays and pick up a little bit of yards with his legs. He's not Kyler or Lamar, but he has enough athleticism that you got to account for it. If you give him a little bit of green grass, then he can kill you for at least 10, maybe 15 yards. But he's not somebody that is good at making a lot of throws with accuracy off platform, on the move, because it seems like every time Brock Purdy gets outside the pocket and he's looking to throw the ball on the run, that's when a lot of bad things happen. And Kyle Shanahan, regardless of him being one of the greatest minds in NFL history, you know, when it comes to offense, I don't think there are too many better offensive minds than Kyle Shanahan that have entered the league in the last decade. But this year, he's in a slump. He has had situations where late in games, the 49ers have given up leads due to him having bad situational football. His play calling has declined. Maybe he needs to look at handing over play calling duties this offseason, because the red zone production has dropped tremendously. This season, the 49ers are 24th in red zone scoring. Last year during the Super Bowl run, they had the best red zone offense. And it's not only because of the injury to Christian McCaffrey why the red zone production has dropped off, but Brock Purdy not being able to take care of the football hasn't helped that. And Kyle Shanahan just not really calling the right plays once he gets inside the red zone area. And the offensive line has been terrible. I mean, when you're a really good offensive mind, you believe that you can win with anybody. You don't need to invest in the offensive line high in the draft to be able to still run your offense, because your offense is still kind of predicated based off the scheme more so than it is the talent of the player. So therefore, if you're a good chess player, you can win despite not having a king and queen as opposed to the other player. But that still doesn't mean that you can win a game with basic chess pieces. You know, you still got to have a couple of special chess pieces here and there to be able to still give yourself a chance of winning. Although you may be really good at strategically winning despite not having the necessary pieces that somebody else does, you still need to have certain pieces in order to win. And that's Kyle Shanahan. Regardless of how good of an offensive mind he is, regardless of him being able to elevate lower level players, you still need to have a strong baseline for your offense to be super efficient. He kind of has been a little bit cocky this year because the 49ers knew that their offensive line was a huge issue going in the last offseason. That was the number one question about this team, was how are they going to address that offensive line? And they didn't really do anything to improve it. And therefore, you come into this year where every time Brock Purdy drops back, the brother's running for his life. And you know he doesn't play that well outside the pocket. So it's not all on Brock Purdy why the 49ers have struggled. It's on Kyle Shanahan. It's on John Lynch for ignoring the glaring holes that they had at several positions on the offensive line. And how about the defense? Because remember, after they lost the Super Bowl, they scapegoated Steve Wilks. The players ain't really like him. You know, they were doing a lot of different things that they haven't done in the past when they had the Miko Ryans and Robert Saleh. Steve Wilks was kind of handicapped because he had to appease the players. They had to buy into a system that he was running that was a little bit similar to what they've had success with in the past, and it didn't work out, but the defense was still elite in my opinion. This year, you get rid of Steve Wilks, you promote a guy from within, and the defense has gotten even worse. And Nick Bosa, you know, when he's on the field, he doesn't look like he deserves to be paid the money that he's receiving. He's paid like a premium edge rusher. When you think of some of the best pass rushers in the game, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, even Michael Parsons, do you even think Nick Bosa anymore? Because I watch the 49ers and I keep asking myself, like, where is Nick Bosa at? Where is one of the best pass rushers in the league at? Oftentimes I watch the 49ers and the guys are no-show. I don't feel his presence anymore. And when you used to watch the 49ers, what made their defense so great was how good they used to be on the defensive line. But over the years, they've slowly had to let guys walk away. Like, you give away DeForest Buckner to the Indianapolis Colts. Arik Armstead leaves in free agency for the Jacksonville Jaguars, you know, and eventually your defensive line loses a little bit of the muster that made it so great when you made those 2 Super Bowl runs, like when you lost with Jimmy Garoppolo against the Chiefs in 2019, and when you recently lost them last year. You arguably had the best defensive line in the NFL during those 2 seasons that you lost to the Chiefs. And yet this year, your defensive line has kind of been a little bit of your Achilles heel. The 49ers' inability to dominate the line of scrimmage has really costed them this season on both sides of the football. Kyle Shanahan, he's been in a decline in terms of his coaching. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan is outdated, but, you know, every good coach has to be able to adapt. And it seems like Kyle Shanahan is just so stuck in his ways that he's saying to himself, no, this works. I know that it works because it's worked in the past. Well, defenses have a lot of time in the offseason to watch film and game plan for you. And obviously, your offense, defenses are kind of now starting to figuring out how to stop it, which is why you got to adjust. And Kyle Shanahan isn't doing that, which is why the 49ers oftentimes this season, we've seen them fall apart in the fourth quarter. And then they've gotten blown out on several occasions. I mean, the 49ers this season, They just had too much going against them to overcome the infamous Super Bowl hangover. I mean, it gave off weird vibes in the offseason with the beef they had with Brandon Ayuk in terms of trading him or deciding to extend him. And that kind of gave off a little bit of a red flag, but I ignored it. I was like, this is the 49ers. This is contract negotiations for every team, but something about the Ayuk 49ers situation just gave off that, this thing isn't probably going to end well. And I didn't even touch on Deebo Samuel, but it's like if you had Brandon Ayuk there, Deebo Samuel would be much better. Deebo Samuel is not one of those traditional wide receivers where you line him up on the outside and he's going to eat. He's one of those wide receivers that is only good in a specific role. And the role that Kyle Shanahan has for Deebo in his offense is perfect when you have an elite wide receiver on the perimeter that's good at running routes, creating separation, forcing the defense to have to key in on him and George Kittle versus just keying in on George Kittle's and Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel's not good at creating separation and running routes the way that Brandon Ayuk does. I remember a few years ago, and a lot of y'all probably remember this too. Remember when people used to make the argument about Deebo Samuel being the better wide receiver between him and Ayuk? And a lot of people kind of, overlooked how more fundamentally and technically sound Brandon Ayuk was compared to Deebo Samuel. That's because Brandon Ayuk isn't an incredibly flashy player. It's fun to watch a guy like Deebo Samuel run everybody over, blow past people. He's a great athlete, really physical player for his position. But certain players are only as good as the players around them. Deebo Samuel is like Robin. Robin's at his best when he has Batman. When Robin's on a solo mission, it may not go as well as planned if he had Batman there. And that's Deebo Samuel. And Deebo Samuel also has kind of fallen off a little bit. Now, last week against the Dolphins, they lost that game. That's the best he's looked all season. Maybe he kind of went back to the fountain of youth. He went to Lazarus Pit and he got revived again. But, I mean, Deebo Samuel is a far cry from what he used to be. And Kyle Shanahan's trying to force feed him the ball to appease him and thinks that Deebo Samuel is the key to getting the offense going when it's really not. You got to find a wide receiver that's more nuanced at playing the position of what Deebo is, because I've never viewed Deebo as a great receiver. I've always felt like he's been overrated. Even when he had his all-pro season, people try to say he was a top 5, top 10 receiver. I used to be like, hell no. Like, Deebo Samuel is a top 10 athlete in the NFL. You can move him around, play him at running back. You can move him in the slot. He can play a little bit on the outside, but he's not a primary receiver. He's a bona fide gadget player in this sense. So the 49ers this year, there were just so many problems that they had before the season even started that you felt this was going to get a little bit weird. And even when they went to the Super Bowl last year with the falling out they had with Steve Wilkes, they kind of were leaking oil then. So the Super Bowl hangover really killed the 49ers this year.